is Chief of Support Services for Anne Arundel County Public Libraries. And you have a handout in your pile of paperwork.
Thank you, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to the conversation about Anne Arundel 2040. I'm Reed O'Donnell. I'm the Chief of Support Services for the library. I take care of the bits, books, and buildings. I support the IT manager, the materials manager, and the capital projects manager for the library. And I'm also a librarian. And just off the top of my head, just letting you know, I love this job. If you ever get a chance to do a library gig, take it. It is a hoot. So, Anne Arundel 2040 comes at a pretty good time for the library. In each of the last 3 years, we have had to take a look at one of our major strategic documents. These are opportunities for us to revisit and rethink about what we do for the community and what we do in the community. In 2015, we contracted with Margaret Sullivan Studios from New York. Hang on to that name, you're going to need it in a minute. To develop the architectural program for the new Annapolis Library. It's the first library that the county's built in almost 14 years. That work led us to reconsider what we had written in the facilities master plan. So we redid that plan as well. We completed that work in December of 2017. And right behind that, just late last year, our strategic plan reached maturity. So it was time to revisit that. What was nice about having that happen in sequence like that is that all the homework that we did for the architectural program and for the facilities master plan led quite naturally into revisiting and redoing our strategic plan, which we have titled Strategy 2022. Now, back to the Annapolis program. Back in the bad old days, or back in the day, designing a library was actually fairly straightforward. It was not quite trivial, but along those lines. You met with the architect. The architect asked you how many books you got, and you told him. It's usually a he. So he went back in his tables and looked up, what it was that you're trying to build, and he says, okay, for X number of books, you're going to need Y linear square feet in Z square feet. Y linear feet of shelving and Z square feet of space. And that was that. And all of a sudden, your capital budget was, your capital funding was $250,000 lighter. That was that. That's pre-internet, pre-Amazon, actually pre-iPhone. When Margaret Sullivan came to us to help us with the Annapolis project, she brought kind of a different take to it. She brought to us this concept of library as studio. What she told us was pretty straightforward. It's not about the book. The book is just a tool. What you're really designing for is your customers. Look at what it is they do in the library. Look at why they come, what experience you're trying to create for them in the library. Once you focus on that, and once you get that clear picture of what your customers are asking from you, then form will follow function. People come to the library to learn, to share, to create. They've been doing this for millennia. But this architectural program was the first time we had taken and put that idea, that concept, in the middle of our planning process. That idea that people learn, create, and share in the library is the studio experience. So before, in the 20th century, where libraries were just a place to store books, the modern library is a supporting, welcoming space that lets you be you. It's a place for you to discover your passion, for you to figure out what you want to know, what you're learning, solve problems, take risks, do all those things in a place that is welcoming and supportive for your adventure. So in analysis and design, the first thing you do is you take the thing apart, you study the customers that you're looking to serve and what they're doing. The second part is you put it all back together. Synthesis, analysis, and synthesis. So in the synthesis part of the architectural program, it became easy for us to see now how all these spaces fit in the new library. Somewhere in the library, you're going to find each one of these spaces. Some places will be dedicated to that particular activity, but every library, just like Margaret Atwood says, every library is completely the same in that they are totally unique. So every place is different. But we designed the space to fit the needs for that community. So you have these spaces. You can also have these spaces in there too. And not to be too snarky about it, but a library really is still, at its core, a library. We provide information. We still need a place to put books and things for people to use. That's library as a studio. Now I need to take just a short detour because there's something a little bit deeper in there that I'm going to come back to in a second. In July of 1995, there was a week-long heat wave that killed almost 485 people in the city of Chicago. When you take into account all the health-related compromises, that number can creep up to somewhere around 740 people. Now, Eric Kleinenberg, professor of sociology and director of the Institute for Public Knowledge at NYU, published perhaps the definitive study of this slow-motion catastrophe in 2002 in a book he called Heat Wave, The Social Autopsy of Disaster in Chicago. To start that book, he looked at two neighborhoods in the southwest of Chicago. They're really right across the street from each other. On paper, these two neighborhoods looked pretty close to being the same. They were both relatively economically challenged, both predominantly minorities. One neighborhood was predominantly African American, the other neighborhood was predominantly Latino. And again, in terms of number of people, in terms of geography, they looked pretty much the same. In one neighborhood, 19 people died in the heat wave. In the other neighborhood, literally right across the street, only 3 people passed away. This neighborhood was actually safer in many respects than a lot of the more affluent neighborhoods in the northwest of Chicago. Why? Why was that? Well, on paper, when you look at the two of them, they look the same. But when you visit the places and walk the streets, you see that they are actually quite distinct. The north area was the classic pre-slum, really pre-industrial kind of rundown kind of neighborhood. There were lots of empty lots. It was harsh. It didn't feel very welcoming. The south of it, there were a lot of neighborhoods. There were a lot of neighborhood bodegas, a lot of shops where it may not have been perhaps the gentrification level of economic activity. There was still a lot of activity going on there. People in the South could connect to each other. They had a place where they could see each other and visit and talk to each other. Even though the crime rate was about the same in both neighborhoods, perceived crime in the North was a lot more felt acute than it was in the South. People in the North's neighborhood, they stayed home. And unfortunately, they stayed home by themselves. And unfortunately, they succumbed to the heat. That idea that there has got to be a place where people come together informs the rest of that study. And it comes up in a little bit here, too. Fast forward to 2012, and President Obama's Hurricane Sandy Rebuilding Task Force created the Rebuild by Design competition to promote and develop innovative projects to enhance climate security while also improving everyday life. In other words, rebuild New Jersey, but not the way it was before. Rebuild New Jersey in the way that helps it resist another Hurricane Sandy, because another one's coming. And Dr. Kleinenberg was the project research director and served on the grants jury. So this is a story that he tells. So I've heard him tell it a couple of times. I hope I give it justice. One of the project teams comes up and says, "Doc, we got it. This is great. We got the idea that we're looking for. What you need to do to build a resilient community is build a nice little space, in a place where people always go to. It's got to be bright. It's got to be opening. It's got to be welcoming. You got to want to like to go there. You staff it with aggressively welcoming people. People who make you feel friendly, who make you feel like this is your place. You're not afraid to ask them for directions. You're not afraid to ask them for anything. You go, you get help. So when times are tough, they are going to bring their kids with them. They don't want to leave them at home. So you got to do something for kids. So you got to provide some programs for kids too, as well, in this place. So you see where I'm going with this. And he's a professor. He lets them go on. Oh, one more thing. You need to give them Wi-Fi. You need to give them electricity, because that might be out at home. You need to give them internet so they can contact their relatives, so they can file insurance claims, maybe books and some information, because they're going to need to get back on their feet. They need all these things too. to make that community really resilient. And you're going to love this, Doc. We're going to call these resilience centers. What do you think? And Dr. Kleinenberg smiles and says, great, congratulations, you've just invented the public library. That idea, that library studio, to me resonates as library as social infrastructure. Remember, we're focusing on people, what people do in our libraries. Behind a study by the Aspen Institute called Rising to the Challenge, Re-envisioning America's Public Libraries, they focus on this idea of people, place, and platform. We build a library, we provision a space for people to come together, to form community identity. That's a trusted location. Because when things get tough, people go to places where they feel comfortable. The literature that Dr. Kleinberg put in Heatwave and you can find in academic databases is rife with examples of cooling centers. They're nearly always empty because they're in gyms, they're in police stations, places where people don't go. You have to put a cooling center, you have to put a response center in a place that people trust, that people feel confident going in. Together, people in place form platform. This is where the community can develop itself, can grow, innovate. All these little minor improvements in life and society overall take place in a space that welcomes and invites. All that work formed the basis for our revisit of our strategic plan. We reaffirmed our purpose, our mission, to educate, enrich, and inspire the lives of all in Anne Arundel County. And we articulate our vision, a welcoming, resilient community where all can realize life to its fullest potential. There's that resilient word again. To further our vision, make that into a reality, we are focusing over this next life of this strategic plan on 5 goals. Better collections and better access. People still come to us for information. People still come to us. So we need to have our doors open and available to them. We need to be in places where they can go and they can find us easily. Thriving Minds, that's our extension of our early literacy programs. Folding that in along with opportunities for all ages to contribute to the intellectual life of the community. So it's places for adults to tutor. It's places for older adults to come and share their knowledge and their life experience with younger adults and form that bond that maybe we used to have with our grandparents. Tailored services, because every community is different. So the library that we place in each community reflects the character of that community and reflects its needs. So the first 3 there are public facing. They're what our customers see every day. The other 2 goals are back of house. They're actually the enablers for the first 3. Before we can provide any of those services, we need a staff that is entrepreneurial in mindset. They create, and they come up with inventive ways of solving problems, and they are able to do that on the spot without asking for permission, without waiting for a long, drawn-up decision process. They just do what they need to do. They know the need and they can fill it. That's a much bigger goal than it just looks on face value, because it's going to involve us revisiting our staffing model, our recruiting, our compensation models, all those things. It's all mixed up into that. And then effective partnerships. Probably the linchpin for the library, because there's a lot of work to be done. And there are a lot of needs in our community. We can't do it all, but we can connect it all. We can be the place where when people come to us, maybe we don't have the answer, maybe we don't have the service, we can find someone who will provide that service and provide that help for them. That's what the library's role in all that is. This is some measure of our impacts. These are the traditional outputs that we typically measure libraries against. Looking forward, though, these are not outcomes. We need to figure out a way how to measure and to communicate the outcomes, the changes that we see in the community that we serve. So we're going to be working on those goals over the next 4 years as well. Finally, we get to talk about buildings. So here's 2 big maps. These show the location of our library. The first one, the little pollen map, that each yellow dot is at a residential address. And the other map shows the census tracts in Anne Arundel County, census block groups in Anne Arundel County by population density. So the darker the color is, the more densely populated it is. We are, with one exception, we're fairly well positioned already. We're in a good starting place to provide these services in places that need them. And it also points out areas where we need to concentrate for our future development. There's a lot of empty space in the south of the county. They still need library. And we need to figure out a way to get it to them. If they can't come to the library, maybe we need to come to them. So there are some initiatives that we're working through our budgeting cycle to get more mobile services available for the South County. And the exception that I was pointing out is up in the north in Glen Burnie. Let me walk over here. So if you look here, this area where you see NCO, that region around is the primary service area for North County. That's where most people in that area go to North County, Glen Burnie, to get library service. And you see how dark it is? 89,000 people live in that one block. One block served by one library that was built in 1965 that is completely inadequate for its current needs. It's in this year's capital budget to be funded for construction and development, but it's pretty far down the line. Contrast that with this string of libraries serving about 65,000 people. There's a bit of an imbalance there. That area does need another library. We will be exploring ways to make that into a reality. Right now, we think that library would be best placed here in the Old Mill campus. That opportunity becomes available, we'll be jumping on that. But we will also look at finding other ways of serving that community much better than we are now, than we have been able to up to date. Our facilities master plan, this is our state of our current buildings. Good news and bad news. The good news is the buildings are in relatively good shape. The bad news is that they don't function very well as modern libraries, particularly because of the technology. And what that is focused on is just bare bones wires that are in the building, getting proper bandwidth from the internet through those buildings. That has been a problem for us that we are looking to resolve as well. So every once in a while, a well-intentioned but perhaps under-informed pundit will ask that question, do we still need libraries? My answer to that is always another question. When don't we need libraries? We need them now more than ever. As long as people have stories to tell and ideas to share and communities to build, they will need a place to do that. And the way I see it, the best place to do it is the library. Thank you for your attention, and I'm ready to take questions if you have. Yes, sir.
What percentage of the space in the new libraries are you portioning off for community meeting space and stuff of that like?
I don't have an exact percentage, but it is a considerably larger number than what has been in those spaces traditionally. I'll get that research. We'll provide that for you. But it also is in the Annapolis Capital. The enumerated program for the new library. Mm-hmm. There's a link on the handout to that document. I'll be able to get that number to you. Because we are designing for people, so it's going to be a huge space in there for community meetings.
I noticed in the diagram for River Beach, it's large.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Can we get access to those maps?
Yes, we sure can. We'll provide those. I'll work with Ms. Carrier to provide them. Yes, ma'am.
With the tracking of the population growth in various sections of the county, you pretty well know where you're going to need another library, and funding's always an issue. But why does it take so long before you buy the property? And because you know it has to go there, and you know you've got to put another library up in Glen County, and yet it seems like nothing happens for years, and all of a sudden at 12 feet, we've got an overgrowth population, we need a library. What's the planning on that?
It's So the vagaries of working through a capital project are kind of tough. Most of the funding for a capital project comes from bonds. And so there's an affordability question that comes into that. There's some thought and study and processes that are a little opaque to us right now, so I can't give you that detail on that. But what has come out of the facilities master plan is a change in our mindset. We are no longer married to the buy, build, own model of putting up these buildings. We are pursuing the opportunity, any opportunity that we can to move into a commercial space if possible. Once we do that, the idea of having to build a space, that problem goes away. The building is available immediately. You enter into there's some other questions about the affordability of it over the long term because you're paying rental costs for it. But that model of being able to provision a library quickly at a fairly low overhead has a lot of attraction. And we hope to explore that more detail with the county budget office.
Shopping center library, the one that we have here, seems to be doing very well.
They are. Mountain Road is it's a nice little library. We are having a hard time finding a better place for it. There are, I mentioned community anchors. There are revitalizations that are going on as well. Not just here, but we have our partner libraries, for instance, in Loudoun County. One of their shopping centers got revitalized. And the anchor location for that was the library, the Sterling Library in Loudoun County. It's a perfect model of how we can do things like that here as well. Yes, ma'am.
Speaking of those libraries and shopping centers, it's my understanding that the one in Annapolis is being asked, they're asking for it to stay. If that is true, how do you justify 2 libraries in Annapolis in recent years as when there's a strong need in North County? And then also, how do you expect for the Brooklyn and Brooklyn Park residents to access a library at Old Mill when they can't even get out of Brooklyn and Brooklyn Park by foot unless they have a car? And third, why doesn't the library disperse funds so that all the libraries can be brought up to speed as opposed to rebuilding completely new libraries if the building structures are supposedly sound?
All very good questions, but let me see if I got them all. So, how do I justify discoveries when there's such a need in North County? Let me give you my frank answer. I can't. For me, our first priority, our first capital priority still is articulated this way, getting a new North County, getting that building, that program accelerated to this next fiscal year so we can start working on it right away. Unfortunately, that proposal did not survive the budgeting process. We're going to have to come back and take another swing at the fall again next year. Discoveries is a unique location. It does things differently than other libraries do. It does have a reach that's a lot broader than all of our other libraries because it's in Westfield, it's in that mall. So it brings people in from all across the southern part of Maryland. We do have a map, I didn't bring it here, but we do have a map of where Discovery's customers live. There's a whole lot of them that come from Calvert County, outside the county, because this is where they come to shop. They come on the weekends and that's where they go. Discovery's also enjoys the characteristic of being on one of the transit routes. So you can take a bus to Discovery's. Recognizing that there are challenges and questions about the viability of that there are opportunities for that as well. Circling around the Brooklyn Park, that is another area that is going to need a lot of love, frankly, a lot of money. We did receive what I felt was a challenge, a good challenge from the county council at our budget review. One council member in particular asked a very pointed question about why our capital project wasn't more aggressive than what we proposed. So we're going back to the drawing board. We're going to restudy and make a different pitch next year. The idea being that if all goes well and luck holds out for us, But the trends point that the Millersville Library will be the last big building we have to build for a while, for a good long time. And that we're going to program into it, right behind that, significant renovations to our existing libraries. And we're doing one renovation at Severn that's being funded by the local development council. It's a relatively modest budget for that, 1.4 million. But the impact that will have, I think, is going to be big. If we're able to do that at Severn, then we have a model that we'll be able to show and roll out to the other libraries and get them up to speed as well. So that's the plan for the future. In the next 4 years, hopefully we're able to prevail at the next budget cycle. Yes, ma'am.
You talked a lot about infrastructure, about physical plant.
Right.
What about the people part of this? That you've mentioned the importance of entrepreneurial staff.
Yes.
How do we as a county stack up in terms of our ability to pay library staff, attract and keep library staff? We know we have challenges with teaching, with fire and police. What's the story with the library?
We are competitive. That means we don't pay the best, but we pay enough. One of the things that recent studies with HR professionals have shown is that when you pay people enough to take money off the table, money's not important. Well, I don't want to say it that way. I mean, money is important, but it's not the key driver for it. What then becomes more important is that people love their jobs. So part of the entrepreneurial staff goal is that we want to put our frontline library staff, we want to make them feel that they're in charge of their destiny, that they are able to do things that they perhaps weren't able to do before. And again, that's going to involve a lot of remodeling how we do our staff. It's going to involve some difficult conversations with the dean of the library schools because they need to give us a product that we need. And right now, I mean, let me be frank, the library schools are not producing who we need. They are not teaching the skills that we need now in the modern public library. So we need to have that conversation with them as well. But the people part that's the magic. That's where the rubber hits the road. I've heard in other venues that the library can be empty. And as long as the staff there are friendly, people are still going to come. Of course, that's just that's an aside, but that is where we are focusing a lot of our attention on.
Considering what you're talking about, especially in my area with the new library that's going to be built, will the librarian and head librarian be doing outreach to various groups and various civic organizations to make them aware of what they're getting? Because I know when I went to the presentation, I never heard of anything along that line. But I think you have local community associations that would probably want to know. You may even have local community service groups like Rotary, Kiwanis, whatever, that would want to know.
In the handout, the very last page is contact information for Kathy Hollerbeck.
Okay.
She's the chief of branches and public services. So she's front of house, I'm back of house.
Okay.
The branch managers work for her.
Okay.
That is something that they even Ms. Harbert's, the Annapolis Library, while her building is being rebuilt, she's out doing that same work.
Mm-hmm.
So that is going to be happening, but Kathy is the one in contact to make sure that.
I think there's two more questions over here.
Yes, sir.
They've been waiting. Go ahead,
Oh, sorry.
Mary Thomas.
Yes, sir. I was curious, does library system employ any consultants to identify complementary uses? It sounded like you have cafes and such in here in some of these, but uses within the library, like, I don't know, a Starbucks or something to help fund alternative funding, or public-private partnerships. Sounds like you're opening up to developers and going into other partnerships where you can get surrounded by multiple complementary uses. I don't know, daycare, Center for the Arts, stuff like that might attract more time, attention, and money.
We are. In fact, so I'm going to surprise my boss here. One of the conversations I got into, a really thick conversation with at my previous library, was the idea that we have this infrastructure in the building that we take care of for public printing. That is a colossal headache. It takes a lot to get that that customer experience really smooth. Why don't we bring, pick one, Kinko's or someone to come in and do that service for us? The public is still paying for what they use. It's a cost recovery, but it is a partnership. Again, it offers Kinko's an opportunity to increase its pace. Of course, we get a lot out of it as well because we get smooth, always working printing services.
And they might pay rent too.
Exactly. So we are open to those possibilities. But again, this is a new strategic plan. It's going to take a little bit of time for us to change our mindsets internally to get that going as well, and as well as finding the right opportunities to present this to the county and have them sign on as well. Yes, sir.
I have no questions for about 2 hours, but I'd like to meet with you after. So the one question that's been, well, first of all, 15 years ago, a bunch of us, 20-some people, met to consult with you guys and offer you a lot of the ideas that you just posted up here. Do you have a CAC for the purpose of planning the future of the library? If not, I would suggest you do that because you had a lot of people that spent a day at the West County Library presenting ideas, which I assume you paid some consultant to reproduce. The other question is, Harris County has a different philosophy. Now, if you look in the small area plan, there's a couple of paragraphs there that the library should be, I think, within a 15-minute drive from every household. So what that does that's different than Harris County is that they have centralized facilities, so they have more assets in each facility, can staff it probably better than distributing your assets all over the whole county. And having sort of from my perspective of looking at Harris County versus Anne Arundel, more of a mediocre library system. So I think that's something that, like I say, was in the last small area plan. It kind of was attractive from political reasons, but I'm not sure that if limited budgets, I mean, you can't even keep your air conditioners running in your libraries. You're not hiring qualified IT people to run your systems, and your network goes down for months. So, maybe having, putting your money in smaller buildings and making them whiz-bang state-of-the-art might be better than to distribute it all across the county. Have you looked into that?
So one of my favorite websites, unfortunately it's gone dark, was called The Usable Library. And it had kind of a snarky tone to it. It was really very useful, very practical kind of directions. What I remember most out of item number 5 on the list of the top things to do about your library is focus on what you do best. It's better if you make half of your customers totally delighted than it is to make 100% of your customers kind of wishy-washy about your service. So that idea of focusing on what we do best and bring to bear our resources to those is part of that change in mindset in this entrepreneurial staff and these effective partnerships. For the longest time, we have been conditioned, but the corporate culture used to be that we had to do it all. We had to have our own IT staff, and we had to do all of these things. If it wasn't for us, nobody else would get it. That's not working. We have to do things a little bit differently, a little bit smarter. We're putting out gentle feelers to the county to have them help us out with IT, backbone-related issues. That is, I believe, going to be fruitful. But it's also one of the first steps in getting the entire staff to change around their idea that, yes, it's okay to have partners in the library doing things with us, even if some of them are paid partners.
Well, you have a lot of partners that are available to you today that I'm sure, for example, the Chesapeake Maker Space up in the Brooklyn area. It's an excellent facility that you could partner with today and provide a lot of those services you talked about. In Severn, you have the unallocated space that would provide a lot of the same services that you provide. They need help. It's all volunteer. It's a grassroots effort. So there's assets today, you just have to go out and reach out. And these people would be probably more than happy. Just because, I think I'm going to run out of time, just one other comment I make to you. Go to the information desk at the closest library and ask them what is going on with 5G. And you'll find out that your statement that wires are what makes the IT infrastructure is a thing of the past. I started wiring networks in '81. So I've been doing that for a while, but wires are not what makes it.
That is true. And we'll push back a little bit on that. Some of those buildings that we're in, though, some of the buildings that we're in, though, that we are currently in, for instance, Brooklyn Park, getting adequate Wi-Fi coverage and all that concrete and all that rebar is not an easy task.
If you hire qualified IT people, it's very difficult.
We'll be looking at that.
Could I just add a couple things just to respond to two of the things you said? One, we did suffer a pretty severe malware attack back last fall. We've gone through hell with it, and it was we weren't really ready. There were many factors that are involved in why that happened. But we do have a new IT manager now who Rudy hired, who's come on board, who's just tremendous. Things are already starting to turn around with that. The 5 staff members who we have who were already there, they're solid. What they needed was leadership, and we've got that in place now. So I think our staff are good, and Rudy mentioned we're working with Rick Napolitano over at County IT to look at ways we can he can articulate it better, but kind of work together with them. On Howard County, when I first got here 8 years ago, it was right after the Miller branch over in Ellicott City opened, and I took tours of people, of the county council members, just a bunch of different people, our trustees, to go see that library as well as the library down in Prince Frederick. But specifically on Howard County, their funding per capita is almost double the funding of the Anne Arundel County Library funding per capita. And to give you an example of what that translates to, we have 3 libraries that have more staff than any other libraries. We have at Annapolis, Glen Burnie, and Odenton, we have between 22 and 24 full-time staff. At the Miller branch, they have around 55 or 60 staff. And they definitely have a different model because they're totally tied into the education system, but they're able to get basically an entire staff that we would have at Annapolis or at Odenton or Glen Burnie to be able to do outreach and connecting with the schools and all of that. So,
one other thing, if you want to knock their socks off, take them over to the Dover
I've heard about that in Delaware.
Because I spent a day consulting with them,
Yeah.
getting to this space, and that will knock their socks off.
Yeah, okay. We'll arrange to. I just
think
wanted to
it's
point out those
I appreciate
things.
that, thank you, sir.
Yes,
And I
thank
know
you.
Gary will talk to you afterwards.
Okay.
And Karin, and then we're gonna
Yeah,
Okay,
wrap
thank
up.
you.
so my question, and this is really important for me, I want to understand how each library implements like their safety, and is it across all the libraries? Do they decide on their own, and particularly with children, and how there's separation in some libraries for children and adults? I would like to see that at the Brooklyn Park Library. I don't think that that's a hard change to implement, and so I want to understand how we protect vulnerable persons in the library, particularly in my area. Is this a model or something that's done everywhere? How is that done?
I don't want to dodge that question, but again, that's Kathy Hollaback's question because she supervises the branches. On the big picture, though, the overall, from a design point of view, from where we look at it, we try to provide wide open, clear sight lines for staff. It's mostly about surveillance, and the best surveillance are the staff. So as long as the staff are able to see into each of the spaces and there are no hidden corners, and that they're able to report back and someone help if they need to, that's our primary defense line. We do allow the branch managers to customize their security plan for their areas, knowing again that each space is different, it looks different, feels different, they have different needs. So at some of the branches, we will have a security guard on hand to help with the security. Other branches tend not to need that, so until, the branch manager has discretion and the authority to summon that help when they need it.
Well, there's definitely not great sight lines in Brooklyn Park where the desk is. I mean, we have a whole children's area that you can see straight down, but you can't see around the corners. And there's a lot of people, homeless people, who come to that library, sleep there, or on the other side to eat over there. I mean, I've experienced, it's one of the reasons I don't go to my library. You know what I mean? It's a big deal.
That's
So you
what
go to the library in Severn, the new library, and you can't even sit over there without, if you're a parent, without your kid with you. You know what I mean? So why isn't that something that's just a standard implementation? Why isn't there a sign that this area is for children and parents with children? That's very easy to fix.
Well, we can't put that signage up. My experience has been that signage tends not to work very well. But what works better is...
I've been chased in libraries for sitting in the kids' area.
What works better is, exactly, I mean, that is having a staff member coming up and say, this is for kids. This is, parents must be accompanied by a kid in this space. But that's a function of staff intervening when they need to. And I'll completely acknowledge, Brooklyn Park is a tough building. It is not very well designed. It predates a lot of the things that we are incorporating into the new library in Annapolis and in Riviera Beach. So I hope you're able to see those differences when those new buildings open. Thank you.
Madam Chair, would you take a question from the peanut gallery?
No.
Especially you,
You can go through for them.
Yeah, well, for the room, for you all and for the speaker.
Let me do it during break or afterwards,
Okay.
because I think they'll be here, because Maury is waiting. Thank you, sir, I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rita.
All the contact information is on the back page, so you all can follow up. Skip, you can leave you with what you want.
I didn't really want that.
Okay, I appreciate it. So Maury from the, Mr. Chuckett from the community, I have to get this right. The Community College Facilities and Services is the Executive Director for Anne Arundel Community College. And he is going to tell us all about what's happening at one of our finest community colleges in Anne Arundel County.
We like to think the finest.
Did I say the finest? The finest.
Yeah, I'm Barney
The
Chapman.
finest.
Jim Taylor was supposed to be with me this evening as well. He's our Director of Facilities Planning and Construction, but he got called away on a family issue. Yeah, community college was, where did I call this thing? We were established in 1961, humble beginnings. We started on the top floor of Severna Park High School. The Arnold campus opened in the fall of 1967, and we've been growing like gangbusters ever since. This tells you a little bit that we are the largest single campus community college in the state. Others have multiple campuses, even though we have other locations. We consider us to be a single campus with outlying locations. Real quickly, this is our mission, and both the mission and vision, the college leadership take these very, very seriously. These aren't just a couple of sentences on a piece of paper to meet a requirement. We take these very seriously. Our previous president actually made everybody on her teams to memorize both the mission and the vision. Now into the meat of who we are from. And I have a little update on these numbers. If the council who got their auditor's reports today on the 2020 budget, if the county executive's request stays intact, that top number will now be $525 million for fiscal year 2020, because our operating budget will be $117 million, not the $112 that's shown here. We have other economic impacts on the county, including the spending of our students from out of the county and the higher earnings from our alumni. And we have tens and thousands of alumni at this point after being in business for 16 years almost.
Can you speak up, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yep. Rarely am I asked to do that, so I apologize for that. Again, these are our locations. The Arnold campus is our main campus. We have a 176,000 square foot health and life sciences building under construction as we speak. Once that is completed, Arnold will be a 1 million square foot campus. And then we also have our other locations, the Glen Burnie Town Center. The county still refers to it, I believe, as Arundel Center North. But we've occupied that building for almost 20 years, almost exclusively. The county does have some offices on the 5th floor. And we also have our culinary school in what was the old Robinson building, and also a county-owned building. We have an 80,000 square foot building that we opened in 2003 on Arundel Mills Circle across from Arundel Mills Mall. And we also have the Fort Meade Education Center and 90 plus other locations, including the detention center and the senior centers. So we are far and wide across this county, and we impact. Is anybody in this room never taken a course at the community college in their life? Show of hands. Okay, shame on you.
Come to South County.
We've tried in South County. In fact, a number of years ago, before Sojourner Douglas went under, we looked at possibly taking over that facility, and we just could not generate the numbers of students out of South County to make it viable. But we've tried and will continue to try. From a facilities planning standpoint, we are required by the state of Maryland to submit a master plan every 10 years. And everything that we ask the state for in support of our capital budget has to be in that master plan. We did the last one in 2016, so the next one will be due in 2026. We also do every 5 years a facilities condition audit to help us maintain and manage our deferred maintenance list, and that also is used very heavily by those developing the master plan going into the future. Okay, I mentioned the 175,000 square foot, $116 million health and life sciences building that we got our final permits today. We did it in 3 phases. The 3rd phase will start next month, which will be actually the foundations. Everything else was preempted. The construction itself, we had to take down 2 buildings, relocate a road, and build a parking lot. So the real work begins in June. On capital renewal, I can also update this a little bit. If, again, our capital budget stays whole in the next 10 days with the council, we will have funding for 2 of our roofs, the Cade building and the Dragon building. We're replacing HVAC on the Math building, and the walkways will continue to be maintained. Now, on the capital side, again, this is pretty good news for us. The Dragon Science Building is one that is seriously circa 1967. Our president likes to tell the story that 7 or 8 years ago, the Discovery Channel was filming a drama. And they needed a circa 1980 science lab, and they came to us to film in our science labs. And you know, that's funny in a way and sad in a way. And we're to the point now where every student coming out of Anne Arundel County public high schools is coming out of better laboratories than they find when they come to us. But the good news is, even though we've been trying to get funding for that project for a number of years, the county executive is now showing that in the out years in the 6-year capital budget. Similarly with the Florestano building, that is also shown in the out years now. And the Skilled Trade Center, hopefully when I get out of here, I'll be getting a phone call. Our foundation board was meeting tonight, and I believe they are going to undertake and have already actually started fundraising to build a Skilled Trade Center on our campus. It's going to start modestly, 13,000 square feet, with the intention to eventually grow it to 40,000 square feet. That's everything I have. I am available for questions because I still have 6 minutes and keep you on track. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have plans for any other outreach centers or other, other parts of the county?
We are always available to listen. Clearly, again, we're in 90 locations across the county. I know that we're a little bit weak in South County simply because, it's not a population center. And getting the numbers that you need to be able to offer programs and at least break even is pretty tough. And funding for us for a number of years now has been more and more lean. Historically, our operating budget was funded a third by the county, a third by the state, and a third by student fees. Today, thank goodness for the county, they're at about 40%, our students are at about 35%, and the state is down to 25%. So, yes, sir.
Might a public library be considered a complementary use for something like this? And has there ever been any conversation of partnering or anything?
And I'm not the subject expert on this, but there are synergies between the county libraries and the college's library. But our missions are very, very different.
Sure.
The public libraries serve the public from 3-year-olds to 90-year-olds, where ours is primarily a research library. So our missions are different, but
so what I was wondering is if a public library had extra community room, maybe it could be used as a satellite office, again, provide another avenue of funding that could have
and certainly we've done that. We've held public meetings, especially at the Odenton Library, prior to us opening our facilities, both at Teague Road and at the mall itself. Yes.
My question is regards to transportation to the school locations. The main campus, I went to the main campus and then I was lucky to be able to go to the Arundel Mills campus to graduate. But it seems like the majority of the congestion on Route 2 is going to that college during school year. Is there any type of transportation?
That's not true, Chris. We're not clogging up the roads.
Is there any type, and another example, my daughter, and I used this example before, it takes her over an hour to get from Brooklyn Park on the regular bus to the school, and she ended up dropping out and trying to figure out how she could better utilize her time in transportation. Have you guys ever tried to figure out like a form of transportation that's specifically for the college?
Again, we have broached that subject. I've been with the college 18 years, 3 or 4 times. Again, we've never been able to get the numbers that it would make it feasible to be run. The thing that we've looked at each and every time is a circulator that would go from Arnold to Glen Burnie to Arundel Mills back to Arnold. And unfortunately, that would take a little over an hour per trip, and not too many people want to sit and wait an hour for the next bus. And to have a second bus would be even more expensive. We have worked and had many, many, many conversations over the years with Annapolis Transit, with the MTA. A previous county executive had a transportation committee, which I had the fortune to sit on at that time. Arundel Mills. Maryland Live was proposing a transportation hub at Arundel Mills. That fizzed out because that would have been very beneficial. We had talked at that time of having several transportation hubs. One of them, for Glen Burnie, for example, would be in the area of Wylie Station Mall. Those things came, they were discussed, everybody seemed energetic about it, but funding never materialized. Yes, sir.
Yes. A quick question in regards to how you use your facilities for the economic needs for the workforce of this area, talking about Anne Arundel County and the greater Baltimore area because of where we're situated. Are you comfortable with your capabilities of educating people, particularly in the STEM fields, knowing the workforce need in that area currently?
Again, I'm going to say, I know some things, I don't know everything because I'm the bricks and mortar guy, but the Health and Life Sciences building, which is going to be 175,000 square feet, that, when we say life sciences, we're talking about biology, et cetera, the life sciences building. When the Dragon building gets done, that will be the physical sciences. We have, Arundel Mills is a higher education consortium. We have 4 universities that
Which ones are they?
the 4, I knew you were going to ask me that. The one I'll speak of that I know the most about is Frostburg, because they offer an engineering 4-year degree at Arundel Mills. They take the first 2 years, pre-engineering, etc., from Anne Arundel Community College at Arundel Mills, and then they can stay in that building and get their bachelor's from Frostburg. I'm trying to remember who else is in there. UMUC is in there, even though they also have a facility not too far from us. I believe Stevenson and Goucher. No, McDaniel.
Because I previously served on the University System of Maryland Puerto Ricans, and I know the importance of when we're talking about community colleges and when we're transferring our students, that they have the skills necessary and the facilities necessary to support the workforce needs, because that also goes to the social mobility of all the residents of the county. They're good, high wage earning jobs, and that's really important that when you guys consider your facility master plans, that you're really taking into consideration the economic needs of not only Anne Arundel County but the region.
But back to your question about STEM, the last year and a half, we launched the laser program, which is land, air, sea robotics. That is really taking off. And I had one other point. And it's still, even though I refer to it as a skilled trade center, the official name is the Clausen Center for Innovation and Skilled Trades. Okay. So, yes, we're very much pushing in that direction. We're about to build our second makerspace where students can get their hands on stuff. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to commend you on the laser program. My son is a part of the laser program, and the mechatronics, so in STEM, I mean, I think Anne Arundel County is one of the few that I know of that has a mechatronics program, which everybody goes, what's that?
Right.
So I think that in many ways they are, answer to that. Are the bricks and mortar facility, certainly there can be some improvements there, as there always would be. But from our perspective as looking at a growth development plan, do you have anything specific? I mean, you seem to have enough land and transportation to discuss that, but is there anything else that we can do for you to help?
Our biggest issue at this point, and I'm sure you're going to hear this from every department in the county, is funding. We've got all the ideas, we just don't have the money to do what we'd like to do. Yes, sir.
You mentioned you had 9 different locations. Is that course driven? In other words, you got a certain course and it's met. You only meet at a certain location. Is that how that works?
In most instances, yes. At Teague Road, we have the Cyber Center. Arundel Mills is our Teach Institute is there, and our PA program is there. But then, there's a lot of enrichment courses that are at the senior centers and community centers throughout the county.
So if I got a catalog for the courses, I would kind of get a better idea
Yes.
where all these other locations are.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And or online.
Thank you, sir, we appreciate it, thank you very much.
All right.
And you have information if you need anything, and we have a 10-minute break, please be back, ready to go at 6:10. All the chief of capital projects division for the Department of Recs and Parks. And Tim has been there for a little while, so he has all the answers.
Oh, man,
We have a lot to live up to here with that introduction. Good evening, everybody. First of all, Rick Anthony sends his regrets, our director. He was definitely going to be here tonight. He's entertaining the Recreation and Parks Advisory Board. They're talking about our operating and our capital budget, which is heavily under scrutiny by the county council right now. So they have some discussions and some deliberations between the Parks and Recreation Board. But he certainly sends his best to this group. He's very much interested in being involved with this advisory committee. I just want to give you a little bit of an overview of our department before I get into the planning part of this presentation. Our department mission statement, pretty typical of most departments. We provide quality, active, and passive recreation opportunities. We provide accessible youth and adult programs. We preserve and enhance natural and cultural and historic resources. Our park system highlights. We have over 12,470 acres of parkland and natural resources areas, and we have over 13,000 acres of agricultural land preservation. All of these areas are under our management. We have an award-winning park facility. We have over 137 parks now. Of course, everybody's familiar with our premier regional parks, Quiet Waters, Kinder, Smallwood, etc. We have 33 natural areas. Jug Bay, Bacon Ridge Natural Area, two of the prime examples of our natural resource areas. We have 2 swim centers, one in the north and one in the south, Glen Burnie and Annapolis. We have 2 recreation centers. They're small, but they provide services to the community. One in the north in the Brooklyn area, and Brooklyn Park area, and one in the south in the Davidsville area. We have 3 golf courses. One of them is currently out of commission. It's under construction, as you probably know, the Eisenhower Golf Course. We have 2 courses at Compass Point out near Fort Smallwood Park. And Compass Point is doing very well now that Eisenhower is under construction. So our numbers are up at Compass Point for tee times. We have 19 canoe and kayak launches, water access launches now. And certainly those areas are also available for fishing and crabbing. Very much an initiative of our department over the last 5 years, and we're making a lot of progress with those water access facilities. We have 2 county-owned boat ramps. Fort Smallwood Park was our first county-owned boat ramp, and we've recently completed one in Shadyside in the Discovery Village site. And we have 23 synthetic turf fields. Synthetic turf fields have added tremendous capacity to our youth and adult sports programs. As you know, on a multi-purpose field, we have field hockey, we have lacrosse, football, soccer. They are heavily used. Kids are now starting to play sideways, so you're getting 4 to 8 teams on a field at any one time. Our parking areas are operating at capacity because of these heavily used fields. But our synthetic turf fields are a tremendous help and give us tremendous relief on our athletic field program. Recreation and athletic programs and participation. We have 318,000 visitors per year at the North Arundel Aquatic Center and the Annapolis Swim Center. So there's no question, swim centers are hugely popular in the county, and we're certainly looking to construct additional swim centers, certainly one in the west and one in the south. We have 35,000 youth and adult participants in athletic programs each year, 6,100 participants in our summer camps and fun centers each year, and we have 41 active child care centers serving 2,500 families. We issue 7,200 permits on an annual basis to use DRP and Board of Education for indoor and outdoor facilities. And we have a website that receives approximately 1.4 million hits per year. Certainly encourage you to go to our website. You will find information on our programs, our facilities, our events, and any new design and construction efforts that the department is embarking on. And certainly, our planning process is also well-defined on our website. Our Land Preservation Parks and Recreation Plan is one of the links on the website. Getting into what we have done recently with planning and what we do on a 5-year basis, we are mandated to produce our master plan on a 5-year rotating schedule as required by the state of Maryland. This allows us to participate in program open space. Program open space grants amount to some $3 to $4 million a year. Half of that money has to be used for land acquisition and land preservation. The other half of that money can be used for park development. This, again, is mandated by the state. Our plan has a 15-year CIP program, capital improvement program. So you can look at our plan and see what we're hoping to do over the next 15 years. It certainly is a moving target. We can add projects to that every time we update our plan, and certainly this process will give us new initiatives and new projects. We certainly think there'll be things that come out of the GDP process that are not in our current plan that we will incorporate in our 5-year update. And we certainly hope that you folks will visit our Land Preservation Parks and Recreation Plan, see what you like, see what you don't like, and carry that through in your recommendations in the GDP. 3 primary components are in our Land Preservation Parks and Recreation Plan. By the way, here's a copy of it. It is several hundred pages long. I can certainly get hard copies to the advisory committee if you would like, but again, it is online. There are 3 chapters in that plan: Parks, Recreation and Open Space, Agricultural Land Preservation, and Natural Resources Land Conservation. Other components of the plan, we have probably the best statewide inventory, or best inventory of county facilities statewide. There are other counties that come to us to look at the model that we use for our inventory. Credit goes to a young lady named Dawn Thomas who works on our staff. She's been working on that for 10 years, and it's extremely detailed. It's now allowing us to do condition assessments on our facilities and rate the condition of facilities so we can then build those into our capital improvement program and try to keep up with the condition of existing parks. Another component of our land preservation plan, we prided ourselves on trying to stay current with updating the public on the small area plans. We took the recommendations from the small area plans, and every 5 years when we update our plan, we tell the public what we've done so far to achieve recommendations in the small area plans. By no means are they all complete. By no means are all of them still viable. There were things in the small area plans that recommended certain specific parcels of land for acquisition that were not available to us, unwilling sellers, or they went to development, etc. So there's certainly recommendations in there that we just can't comply with, but you will see in the plan a summary that tells what we've done to try to address the recommendations in small area plans. Now we're getting into that process again under County Executive Pittman, and certainly we will update all of that, and I'm sure the advisory committee will utilize the old and certainly take a look at new initiatives that we can do from a small area perspective. We have a supply and demand analysis based on citizen surveys that were conducted as part of our land preservation plan. We took in public comments, demographic data, and participation data are all included. And we also made sure that we have a record of all public comments in the appendices of our plan. You will see whatever public comments came in. Yes, sir.
I was going to say, do we get a copy of that, or
absolutely
access to it in some way?
Yes. I can give you my business card and contact me directly. I'll get a copy to you. Or again, it is online. It is online. If you go to our website, the Department of Recreation and Parks, it would be under Forms and Publications. A little difficult maybe to find that, but just look for Forms and Publications and go to LPPRP, Land Preservation Parks and Recreation Plan. Let's see here. Public outreach and community involvement. We pride ourselves on public outreach, in my opinion, especially in our land preservation process. We did a citizen survey. We got over 2,000 responses to our citizen survey. We think that is commendable compared to what you see in other citizen surveys. A lot of people are interested in what we provided our department. We had work sessions with the Bicycle Advisory Commission. John Corrin is with us tonight. He's a chairman of the Bicycle Commission, also president of Fight AAA in the county. And so we work very closely on all of our trail planning, and they are certainly a partner and an advocacy group that help us with getting funding for our trails. We also work with all the county athletic associations. We have year-round collaboration with land trusts, river keepers, river associations, and the Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Foundation. We have a collaboration with the City of Annapolis, and that is growing stronger every day between Mayor Buckley and County Executive Pittman, and certainly we will be working with the city on projects, mainly trails and land preservation, land acquisition. Yes, sir.
What is the current status of the Water Access Commission and its members? If you're giving, is it still in effect, or is it been?
To the best of my knowledge, the commission is not in effect anymore since the new administration took over. However, the Water Access Committee has reformed, and a lot of the folks from the commission are still serving on a committee and still advising the county.
Question on that. It actually kind of blurs the line between the commission and the committee. If it's the same people doing both, and they just change their name. So, one of the questions,
from what I understand, there is no commission per se. There's just the committee.
We may have to get back on you and the official info on that.
I see the conflict. So, okay, thank you.
I can certainly get back to you and get more.
Please.
Let's see, City of Annapolis, online post of a draft plan. Okay, in addition to the surveys that we conduct for our land preservation plan, once we get a draft plan, we post it online. We advertise it in the paper. We don't bury it in the public notice section. We purchase large-scale ads in the Capitol to try to get the word out that our draft plan is online. And we did receive considerable amount of comments the last time on our plan, which helped us very much in finalizing the plan. Based on a comparison between the 2017 plan and the 2013 plan, our findings were that our online survey and our reaching out through our website was much more productive than the public meetings. That's not to say we're going to get away from public meetings. It's just to say that there are many tools in the toolbox to gather public input. So we will continue to use online surveys, social media, websites, public meetings, etc., as we continue to plan for the future. Okay. Let's see here. Public demand based on the survey. When we conducted our survey, there were approximately 20 items that ranked in what we call a Tier 1 and Tier 2. As you can see, Tier 1, and these would be things that were people demanding more facilities of this type. And the ones that ranked high were trails, water access, nature centers, dog parks, fishing piers, swimming beaches, indoor tennis, dog beach, outdoor tennis, and mountain bike trails. Tier 2 was actually very close. The number of respondents supporting the Tier 2 items was really very close to the number of respondents in Tier 1. So I think what it shows is there's not that much spread between what the public wants. And basically all of these items are certainly things that we're working towards to try to accomplish, and most of them are identified in our 15-year capital improvement program. Draft of the public comments. Again, we did receive over 300 public comments. Similar responses to what we got on our surveys, but there are 3 items in here that didn't appear that heavily on the surveys, and they are ice rinks, track and field facilities, and recreation centers. I think what it shows is when we put our draft plan online, the advocacy groups somewhat get together and then start to certainly submit interest and comments in and support for facilities. So not so much in the survey, but in the public comments of the draft plan, these are the items that rose to the top, and certainly ice rinks, track and field, and rec centers were new items that were not that prevalent in the survey. The state of Maryland required 2 new methods for how we determine what we need in the way of additional land acquisition, park development, etc. One of those methods is called proximity analysis. And this method looks at the proximity of our facilities, our existing parks, to households throughout the county. And what it was broken down by parks as well as trails, water access facilities, etc. I'm only showing the map that dealt with parks. And what this shows is the areas in white are basically areas that were determined to be underserved, and they are probably what folks would expect. Areas north of Fort Meade, the Hanover and Harmons area. So these are areas where we don't seem to have enough parks and facilities in close proximity within a half mile to residents. So you'll note that some of our new capital projects, etc., are focused on these areas and trying to acquire land and develop more facilities in these areas. Some of the other maps that you'll be able to see in the plan itself were that most of the county is within 5 miles of a water access site. Again, we have 19 or 20 water access sites, so we're doing a pretty good job of making those available to all residents. Clustering of athletic fields and indoor facilities have left gaps in northern and western planning areas, so we do have to go into northern and western planning areas and again try to either expand existing facilities or acquire land for new facilities. A second method that was just recommended by the state and included in our plan is an equity analysis. And the equity analysis deals with areas of large population and lower income levels per household, areas that often come up underserved. And in Anne Arundel County, we have some of those areas, and they were, did I change? Yes, I did. No, it didn't change, excuse me. In Anne Arundel County, those areas were Annapolis Parole, Ferndale Brooklyn Park, north of Fort Meade, Glen Burnie and south of Glen Burnie, Laurel, Maryland City, and the Wall Chapel area. So again, another tool, another method to identify where we need facilities, and we will respond accordingly. This method, the park equity analysis, was consistent with what was determined under the proximity analysis. So these methods are melding together fairly well and giving us good guidance on what to do in the future. Water access sites, just to touch on that a little bit, it has been a major initiative of the department. Again, we have 19 sites spread throughout the county. This map is in the document, so you can go to that if you want to see where those exact locations are. I certainly encourage you to use those if you have an interest in car top boating or fishing and crabbing. County policies moving forward, and these will be very important to us and to the advisory committee. We certainly want to know what new policies and new initiatives the advisory committee determines and working with the communities and bringing back to us some information. But currently, our focus has been on emphasizing maintenance and rehabilitation of existing parks over the development of new parks. We feel very strongly we have to take care of what we have, and we have some shortcomings in that area, there's no question. It's very easy to get capital funds to build new projects that folks can cut ribbons on and celebrate. It's extremely difficult to add funds into rehabilitation projects or going in and fixing up what you already have. And so I think it's unfortunate, but we do promote that we try to get our park renovation account, we try to make that one of our highest priorities every year to make sure that we get additional funding to try to take care of what we have. Number two, we continue to acquire land. and easements for parks, open space, natural resource protection, and agricultural preservation. We have a Greenway, Parkland, and Open Space account. It usually has $3 to $4 million in it a year, most of it program open space funds. So we have an active acquisition program, and certainly Barbara Polito, I think, has already addressed the committee on ag preservation. She has the Rural Legacy Project and Agricultural Preservation Project, and certainly also is doing a great job preserving agricultural land in the county. Increased water access has certainly been an initiative. Address parking deficiencies in existing parks. This is one of the biggest problems we have. User groups in the parks always want to expand facilities and add more facilities, but what they forget is every time we build a new field or a new tennis court or basketball court or whatever, you bring additional folks into the park, and if you don't have the parking to address that, you're going to have a problem. And unfortunately, we sometimes get asked to remove parking in favor of putting in new athletic fields, and we just have to try to bring those folks around to our thinking. The best thing you can do in that situation is try to acquire land adjacent to the existing park if you're really in need of expansion. Enhance existing assets rather than developing new assets. I've already spoken to that. Prioritize and develop indoor sports facilities. We get a lot of recommendations and pressure to move into the indoor sports arena, and we are certainly doing studies on that. We're taking a look at our undeveloped parks to see if any of them would be suitable for those types of facilities. The tennis center at Millersville is certainly one that's under review currently, and also there is a great demand for indoor basketball and volleyball. The school gymnasiums are just not meeting the need, and a lot of times getting access into the schools, we have a lot of competition for those. So we do need more indoor sports facilities if we're to address the demands of the public. Complete the planned regional trail network. John can educate us on trails, that's for sure, but we have the Broadneck Peninsula Trail, the South Shore Trail, and the WB&A Trail that still have components that are under design and construction. Moving forward as aggressively as we can. We utilize federal funds and state funds to the best of our ability to keep those projects moving, and tremendous support from the public as in the slideshow. New facility locations, emphasize gaps, identified proximity and equity analysis. I've already talked about that. We certainly do need to fill in the gaps where we don't have sufficient facilities. Implement green building and environmental site design technologies. All of our parks are designed with environmental site design technology in mind by our consultants. They're told up front to exercise all environmental constraints in what they do. And we certainly follow green building specifications. Any building over 10,000 square feet has to have at least a LEED Silver rating when we go to design and construction. Continue to work with the public school system on shared use. I worked in Howard County for many years, and I can say that Anne Arundel County has the best relationship that I've seen, certainly between those two counties, with our Board of Education, with the folks in the school system. It's just a matter of there's just not enough facilities out there to address the needs of both agencies, but we do the best we can. Continue to explore public-private partnerships. Certainly the tennis center is a public-private partnership with a 501c3. We have a partnership currently in the works in the Brooklyn Park area with the Cal Ripken Senior Foundation. We had a successful project with them at Bates Heritage Park where we constructed a beautiful synthetic turf field for the Boys and Girls Club of Annapolis and the general public to use. It was a great experience with the Ripken Foundation. They are self-contained with design and construction elements to their operation. So we pretty much turn things over to them. We write up the necessary agreements, and they design and construct these facilities, and they also help us with fundraising. They contribute to those projects. So we have one going on right now at Brooklyn Park Middle School. We want to take all the athletic acreage that's around the school and redevelop it. There will be high-end synthetic turf fields. We want to put in a new track and field facility. Track and field facilities are in great need because, for the most part, the school system, with our help, has converted a lot of their stadium fields to synthetic turf. And when you do that, unfortunately, you tend to lose some of the track and field elements that you used to be able to address. So we're trying to place some track and field facilities strategically throughout the county to help meet that need. And again, we've heard from the public in that area that there is a dearth of those types of facilities. And again, continue to address the needs of the county's senior population. Certainly the senior population is one that's growing very quickly with all of us baby boomers, and we have certainly made adjustments to our programs. Again, more money into trails. We tried to float a pickleball project this year. Wasn't successful, but I think it will be next year. But we were able to put some money in our park renovation account so we can perhaps upgrade some of our tennis courts, use them simultaneously with pickleball, not simultaneously at the same time obviously, but put lines on our tennis courts to allow for both games to be played. Pickleball is getting extremely popular. Coming up from the south and Florida, it's just taken over, and we're starting to see the pressure very quickly trying to react to that. So again, we tried, and that's a very popular senior sport. So that's a good example of what we're trying to do to provide as much as we can for seniors. And certainly we have a lot of programs for seniors, yoga and what have you in the schools and rec centers, etc., throughout the county.
One question first, please.
Yes, sir.
Public-private partnerships, have that, or boat ramps or water access, has that been looked at yet?
Yes, we are doing a study currently. The results are due back to our department any day. We did a survey of all the existing marinas in the county, and we also sent them to Homeowners Association. We didn't know what kind of reaction we would get from Homeowners Association, but anyone, homeowner associations or marina owners, we sent a questionnaire to them to see if they would be interested in partnering with the county. We should have some results on that pretty soon. And what I did hear is there have been several marinas that definitely want to sit down and talk with us. If you look at the South River, the Severn River, the Magothy River, look at an aerial photograph and try to find any land that's undeveloped along the river. We've tried to do that. We tried under the Pryor County Executive to see if we could find acreage where we could build additional boat ramps. You end up being right next to very large estate-type homes, and it's just not the right situation to bring in boat ramps. So our feeling is if we can find marinas that are either interested in selling or interested in making some improvements, we would like to partner with them.
Okay, let's keep going. We have a few more to go. We'll do questions.
So just real quick, our capital improvement program in the plan, $426 million over 15 years. And our capital budget is right in line with that. Believe it or not, we get around $28.4 million a year. If you project that over 15 years, our plan is very reasonable as far as from a cost perspective. 50% of our budget, our capital budget, is grants on an annual basis for the most part. Program dollars are consistent with the current capital budget. Our 15-year program is consistent with all of the public recommendations. And we have continuous public input. We'll dictate priorities, timetables, and funding going into the future. General development plan and the land preservation, parks and recreation plan. Again, I've told you about our document. It's a living document. We'll be updating it again in 2022. So all the input coming in from the GDP is going to be critical to what we do with our next update, and we certainly hope this will be critical to what you folks are doing. The GDP recommendations will be incorporated into our 22 plan. I think I just said that. We look forward to working with the committee, and we will incorporate whatever we get back from you folks into our future update. And I'm certainly available for questions. And again, if people want copies of the plan, I'd be glad to give you my business card. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, are you contacting HOAs with regard to pickleball, where the tennis courts are underutilized? And do you also have a program for community gardens?
As far as contacting HOAs, we plan to put a committee together. We got the word out recently, probably a month ago, to the Tennis Alliance to get them to help us make the communications with pickleball advocacy folks and try to bring them together and give us a recommendation for some folks to serve on a committee. Certainly they would be from various communities, et cetera, et cetera. And the thoughts were to try to find out, what do we want to do, folks? Do we want to build new pickleball facilities that are separate from tennis facilities? Do we want to try to continue blended lines on the tennis courts? We're getting some negative feedback from tennis players. They don't like that. I personally see the two facilities ultimately standing alone if you're going to have the public be satisfied with from both perspectives of that. But as far as reaching out to individual homeowner associations, you mean to ask them if they're supporting local community parks as having?
Well, I know Russet is looking at doing that because their tennis courts are underutilized.
Okay. We would love to hear from you folks.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And the community gardens issue, is that something that you are?
The only community garden involvement that we have, to the best of my knowledge, is we do have community gardens at Kinder Park. The dairy farm property, which is probably a sore subject, was intended, the first phase of that was intended to have a large community garden site. With the questionable future of the dairy farm property, it hasn't gone very far, but that is a component of that project. Other than that, we haven't received a lot of public demand to expand what we have, but again, we're all ears.
Okay, thank you.
We need one question over here, two questions. Okay, we're short on time, so quickly.
You touched on the very critical aspect of parking and the facilities. Is there a formal process for evaluating the infrastructure to actually reach the facilities? And if so, what is that formal process for evaluating to determine where these facilities should be in that infrastructure capacity getting there?
I wish I could tell you that we were spot on with that effort, but we're not. Our responsibility is to try to design and construct the parks. We do conduct traffic studies when we're proposing facilities that will have heavy traffic coming into them, especially at rush hour and things of that nature. We're doing that for the Millersville Tennis Center. So we do traffic analyses. For the most part, the volume coming into our parks are usually at times when we're not causing any further degradation to the level of service of the roads and the intersections, but certainly there's always that possibility. But as far as long-range planning for traffic associated with parks that are being proposed, we probably need to do a better job. That's all I can say. Erica, would you have anything to add to that? Erica, by the way, Erica Jackson is our primary park planner and project manager. She's managing over 30 projects in our department, coordinating with the Department of Public Works. Not only is she a great manager and a planner, she's a civil engineer. So she has a lot of knowledge that I don't have. Erica, I don't know if you have any thoughts on traffic or that you wanted to add. Or.
No, I mean, we've been working on addressing issues where the community expresses them in community meetings. In terms of parking, we've been trying to figure out better numbers to use for the team. For example, when we look at a football player, we assume that there's a mom, a dad, grandparents. So we assume about 2 or 3 cars per child now, just because of so many, the interest level. So we've changed how we're modeling our parking capacity, so it's not just a 1-to-1 ratio. So we're taking little steps where we can and try to get a better handle on it. Where we've needed help, we have reached out to DPW, to their transportation and traffic department, to do counts and studies for us, to figure out if we needed to do further mitigation. So it's on a case-by-case basis. That's sort of how we proceed with that.
It seems to me that I understand that multiple cars per person, because I've been one that we have to tag team and one parent comes and, you know, goes or whatever, and the grandparents, I get that, but it seems like, in the big picture, long-term, having multimodal options would be more beneficial than just more and more and more parking, because I just don't think that's realistic.
That's a good point. Yes, ma'am.
Could you tell us some of the projects that did not get activated in the old SAP or GDP that you would like to see going forward in this one?
There are certain trail projects that were discussed in the Lake Shore area that we continue to look at and wish that we could try to do something to accommodate additional pedestrian use out in that area. It's going to take a significant right-of-way evaluation and determination of where you might have land and property to do so. That's one that comes to mind. There are so many of them. I'd be glad to take another look at that and get back to the committee with what our department would see as something we need some help promoting. Is that kind of what you're looking for us?
What are your priorities?
Okay. Yeah, I wish I could spill them all out, but I'm 67 years old. My memory's just not that good. Any other questions?
I was just going to commend you on a good presentation. Exactly the kind of information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, we appreciate it, thank you.
Just a quick one, comparable to one that I gave to the library, which is for indoor facilities, volleyball and other things. There's a lot of vacant space, especially in the areas where you want to see better economic growth. And I would encourage you, instead of looking at new buildings, trying to go into vacant
Adaptive
space.
reuse.
Yeah. That's a very good point. Some of the facilities we've looked at on occasion don't have the ceiling height. Like if you go into the old giant food stores and things of that nature, you don't have the ceiling height for volleyball, basketball, tennis, etc. But again, I think case by case, it definitely needs a look, and that's a great idea.
Thank you, appreciate it, thank you
Sure
very
thing.
much.
Good evening, everyone.
Go ahead, Rick,
Okay.
sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brody Holthouse. I'm the Deputy Director in the Department of Public Works, overseeing the Bureau of Waste Management Services. I wanted to introduce also Chris Phipps, our Director of Public Works, who's in the back here. Just introduce him. And I'm joined by Rich Bowen, who's our Recycling and Waste Reduction Manager tonight. So what I really wanted to spend some time on is just go through the solid waste section of this community services report that was published as part of the GDP background reports. And I wanted to touch on a few things in particular and certainly answer any questions. And we're really happy to be part of this process and talk about some of the things that we do, what we're doing for our residents, and also some of the other finer points of solid waste and solid waste management here in the county and in the state. So some of the key points I wanted to cover.
Sir, remember we're being recorded, so if you can speak up.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thanks.
So some of the key points I wanted to cover. Solid waste facilities obviously must comply with federal and state law, and also local zoning and local site development requirements, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Anne Arundel County Public Works is the primary service provider for county residents, so county resident solid waste services. But private sector service providers manage the majority of waste that's generated and handled in the county. So this is a graphic that you'll see in the background report. It's actually 2016 data, but it gives you an idea of the scope. So over about 1.2 million tons of solid waste, which includes trash, recyclables, all those types of yard waste, all those types of things. And the county government is managing about 28% of that in a robust private sector of haulers and collection contractors and facilities are managing about 72%. And again, this is 2016 data from the state. So just to sort of orient you to the laws and regulations regarding solid waste, the primary federal law is the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act of 1976. Maryland has its own environment article that governs what happens here in the state of Maryland, and obviously it follows federal law. And Maryland has regulations in the Code of Maryland Regulations that really addresses the hows and whys of solid waste management. And DPW is a regulated entity just like any of these private service providers. Now within the Anne Arundel County Code, this is a little bit more particular to the way Anne Arundel County functions, but Article 18, the zoning article, really includes the requirement for solid waste uses. And some of those, I'm not going to go through the complete list. Some examples are composting facilities, natural wood waste recycling facilities, recyclables recovery facilities, rubble processing facilities, and solid waste transfer stations. Those are uses that are identified in the county code. Now, if you're trying to develop one of those uses, you certainly have to go through the requirements and meet the requirements of Article 17, which is the subdivision and development articles. So that governs how you develop one of these sites, solid waste sites, which is a little. I guess the third thing I want to talk about are the county provided services. So the services that we provide, that Rich provides, are really under Article 13 Public Works, and that is really focused on the services that are provided to the county residents, the fee structure, the county facility rules and requirements, those types of things. So I'm going to start as a jumping off point to talk about the services that we provide to the citizens and how those services are structured so that we can grow as the county grows and expand as the county expands and the number of residential units grows over time. I didn't mention this, but I'll take the time to do that. We are an enterprise fund, so we're not a general fund agency of the county. So all of our revenues from the various services and charges fund our operation. So I'll talk more about all the different things that includes as we go forward. But this is just to show you the two major sources of revenue, which are the solid waste service charge. That's the fee charged to each residential home that receives these services. And you can see it's we have a history of trying to set a rate and sustain it for as long as possible. So the history there shows we were at $234 from fiscal 1997 to about fiscal 2005, and then it went up to $275 per household. And then in fiscal 2012, it went to $315 per household. If you recall, if you were living here at the time, we reduced our trash collection frequency to once per week, and that accounts for the reduction to $298 where we currently sit. So in the FY20 budget proposal, we're still proposing $298 per household rate. And then the second fee is the landfill fee. So for those folks under the county code that have to pay a charge at the landfill on a unit per ton basis, our fee has been $75 per ton since fiscal 2010. Some other revenue sources include the sale of electricity from our landfill gas to electricity project, the Millersville landfill, and I'll show some pictures of that. And also recycling revenue, so materials that we are able to market, cardboard, scrap metal, all types of materials that we are able to sell into the marketplace, help us keep our fees low and affordable. So on the subject of county provided services, we are providing curbside collection service, so that's once per week, trash, recycling, and yard waste collection. It's outsourced through 14 competitively bid contracts, and you can see here, it's kind of small, but the growth in the number of households served is really a function of residential growth in the county. So back in fiscal 2013, we were at 153,097 customers at year end, households, that is. And as of fiscal 2018, we were at 161,825. As we sit here today, we're over 163,000 household customers. So the mechanism, as new homes are developed and occupied, we're notified of the occupancy permits, and we're able to add those units to the rolls, start the service as soon as the homes are occupied. This is just a picture. I'm trying to show some of the things that we do. This is the style of collection we're using for all of our curbside collection. It's a rear packer truck. Our single stream recyclables go to a private facility in Elkridge. It's owned and operated by Waste Management Recycle America. Yard waste is another recyclable item that we're collecting every week of the year. So leaves, grass, and small brush picked up at curbside. We also operate 4 county facilities, so really residential collection facilities in Glen Burnie, Severn, and Deal. We call them the Northern, Central, and Southern Recycling Centers. We also operate the Millersville Landfill and Resource Recovery Facility, which is in Severn as well. So the curbside collection gives you many opportunities to discard things. We're trying to provide even more opportunities at our facilities. So certain items that can't be handled at the curb can be handled at our facilities. These are just some pictures of some of the areas of these facilities, but we can collect antifreeze, used motor oil, used cooking oil, oyster shells, textiles, electronics, batteries. So quite a few items we're able to divert from the waste stream and recover and recycle at our facilities. One of our most popular events is our household hazardous waste collection events. Again, we do that in concert with a contractor who has all the required regulatory approvals and authorities to collect and handle this material, but we rotate them throughout the county throughout the year so that citizens have an opportunity to participate. We're very proud of our, again, we call it the Landfill and Resource Recovery Facility. We probably should swap the order there, because this is a picture of all the things that we can recover from our actual landfill, from residential and business customers. So we can recover scrap metal and scrap tires, yard waste, brush, all types of things, textiles, to keep them from going into the landfill and preserving the life of our landfill. This year we added a really large horizontal grinder so that we're able to turn what's actually a replacement for an earlier piece of equipment, but it's able to turn brush and stumps and logs into a mulch material. This just shows sort of a little thematic picture of our landfill. If you're familiar with Millersville Landfill, it's been there since 1975. And with all the recycling and composting operations that we've been able to execute over the past 30 years, we've really prolonged the life. But to orient you here, this portion of the facility closed in 1992, and this portion of the facility opened in 1992 and is just closing now as we speak. And we have 85 acres of future development for future capacity that will take us into the 2040s or late or beyond. One of the exciting projects we've done in the last few years is a gas to electricity facility. So the landfill, as organic waste decompose without oxygen, they create methane. We've always captured the methane, but now we're able to use it as fuel in engines and produce electricity, and we sell it back to the grid. So that's another revenue source that's come into our budget these last few years. So as an enterprise, we approach our future needs with a couple of critical planning objectives in mind. We want to ensure adequate recycling and disposal capacity. Yes, I'm sorry, is there a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Have you completed a cost benefit analysis on that energy production capability to determine when the investment is paid for?
Quick answer is yes. It's doing better than we had hoped. So each year, the structure of that project is the county got a $2 million grant under the stimulus money from a few years ago and borrowed about $5 million to build a roughly $7 million project. And each year, we are able to pay for the operating costs from the new revenue, pay for the debt service costs from the new revenue, and also pay for our own electricity costs that we, for all of the facilities that I talked about. And then anything that's left, we split with this new energy loan fund that was created by the county. So it's actually a 60-40 split. The enterprise keeps 60 and the energy loan fund gets 40%. And that's done some of the projects you see here. I think these LED lights and some projects like that around the county, energy conservation and energy savings projects were funded through that fund. So it's been a good project on a sort of a number of levels. So when we're looking at planning for the future, we're really looking at ensuring adequate recycling and disposal capacity, and we do have a 10-year solid waste management plan. That's a requirement of the state regulations. You can find that online. I can certainly provide a link if anyone's interested in looking at that. Again, the county has to meet all federal and state and local requirements. And we also, as an enterprise, we don't have anyone else caring for our infrastructure. So we have to maintain and preserve our infrastructure to support all the things that we do. So here's a couple of pictures of some projects that we performed recently. We expanded our composting pad area at the Millersville landfill. So again, all the yard waste that we're collecting at curbside is directed there. It's reduced in size, and it's composted in windrows, which are long, narrow piles that we turn and manage. And we are able to sell the finished product. It's not given away. That's a question we get often. If residents come and take that, the answer is no, because it's actually sold on the marketplace. We have one of our earliest operations is a paper and cardboard recovery building. I actually have a newsletter that shows Governor Schaefer at the facility back in the 80s. So obviously this is after the facelift, but we were able to refurbish and renovate the building and the baler, so we're able to bale and sell cardboard from that facility. I mentioned our future. It includes the disposal area. This is the Cell 9 disposal area. It's 85 acres. We just finished building the first sub-cell, so it's sort of 5 15-acre chunks to be developed over the next 2 decades. The FY20 budget, if it's approved, will include the construction money for the second sub-cell, and then the out years we will start designing the third sub-cell. These are some pictures of some of the infrastructure. We, again, have a 600-acre campus that's been there since 1974. So in addition to buildings and roofs and HVAC systems and plumbing, we have underground utilities that we take care of. We have above-ground facilities for handling landfill gas, liquid waste that comes out of the landfills as well. Before we had the the gas to electricity facility, we had a large flare. We still have that there, though we don't use it, but we need it to be in usable shape when we need it, if we need it. And then we just have the regular care and maintenance of all the buildings. This is just showing some roof and door repairs on the building. I also wanted to talk about private solid waste facilities. Again, in our solid waste management plan, it's really a ministerial duty, but we track those facilities. So they are really regulated by state issued permits, so MD issued permits, but they must comply with local zoning, and I mentioned a little bit about that. Once they comply with local zoning, we're obligated to include them in our 10-year plan. That's one thing that the state will look for when issuing permits. And these are the main facilities, and I have a list from MDE if anyone's interested. But it's the Curtis Creek Processing and Transfer Station in Baltimore. It's really near, I guess, right in the county border with Curtis Bay. Annapolis Junction Processing and Transfer Station, which is out on Rock Ridge Road in Jessup. The Tolson and Associates Rubble Landfill on Capitol Raceway Road in Crofton. And I think the newest of those facilities listed is Biomedical Waste Services, which is off of Fort Smallwood Road in near Pasadena. So I'm happy to take any questions or provide any follow-up information. Yes, sir.
Where does the Fort Meade solid waste go?
Fort Meade has its own contracts for solid waste. My understanding is they use private service providers. On the residential side, they have a management company that takes care of the housing, and they're responsible for solid waste collection and recycling collection. And on the Fort side, they have had in the past their own Director of Public Works and their own staff to do some collection and sorting, but they also have a network of contracts and contractual service providers in the region.
So they use the county's facilities?
The Fort Meade tenant does not use the county curbside collection.
No,
but they could, if they are living in Fort Meade, they could use a county facility.
But what about the landfills and those kinds of things?
They do not direct solid waste to our landfill at this point. They could do that. But they don't.
Contractors take it somewhere else?
Yes.
In other areas, there's been an effort to put solar on landfills. Are there any plans to do that in Anne Arundel County?
The short answer is yes. The long answer is we've tried it 3 times, and unfortunately, so far we haven't been able to attract a solar developer. We have done 3 requests for proposals. One at the Millersville landfill, and I guess these landfill closure projects. One the closing capital landfill. There's a multi-million-dollar system of geosynthetics and underlying infrastructure for removing gas that has to be considered. So I guess it's a little bit more risky than putting it in some other area. But I think developers are getting better at that because there certainly are projects across the country, and there's the City of Annapolis project as well. So we're going to try again.
Just what I'm going to add on to that, associated with the Neil Blank Park. There's a 70-acre capital landfill, solar park right on the park. It's on the Betts Highway, so it technically is in Anne Arundel County. But I don't think Cody was including it because it's owned by the city.
Correct. But there is interest in doing one on the county property. We have a Glen Burnie landfill that was closed in around 1980. That's an earthen cap, and it's a flatter site. There's some of those complexities I talked about with the capping system don't exist. So we've tried it once, and we weren't able to get to a deal that was acceptable to the county and the developer. But we're going to try it.
2 quick questions. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. Go
I have 2. Real quick, Southern landfill, what are we doing with the methane gas there, number 1, and number 2, instead of working with waste management on recycling, how come the county's not doing that?
Okay, first question, at the Southern landfill, very small amount of gas, there is a passive collection system, so as gas leaves the landfill, it's collected in pipes, and there are solar activated flares out there, so it's flared basically. Probably the studies that we've done, it's not enough generation to do a project. And then the second question was why isn't the county doing the recycling? So we I guess faced with the question of buy a service or build, we've always bought that service. So we go out to the marketplace and try to get the best price for the recycling, and we're lucky enough to have that Elk Ridge facility real close to our borders. So it's always made more sense to use that facility than to try to go it alone. One of the big risks of going alone is you have to market the material, right? And I don't know if you have tracked what's going on in the world right now, but with some of the overseas policy changes and the demand for material, it really takes a big company to be able to market this material sort of across the world. So what we're recovering is mixed plastic and sorted HDPE, PET plastic, aluminum, mixed paper, high-grade office paper, cardboard, right? So yeah, I think probably now is the time that all the problems that you're reading about with other local governments and municipal governments that are running their own facilities and can't market the material. That's because they just don't have the tentacles that go across the world, and they're relying on regional facilities that may or may not have capacity.
And that's just for single stream recycling. We manage everything else that Brody mentioned. We do manage. So all those other materials that we recycle that we don't landfill, we manage at our facilities. Right? So for single stream recycling, which is a component of our overall recycling, we do over hundreds of thousands of tons a year overall. The single stream is a component of it, and it's less than half. So
thank you. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So
we do outsource that one.
Rich and his folks market the cardboard that the county folks bale, and the scrap metal the county folks can recover and
textiles. And textile, we look for every opportunity to find something that we can manage ourselves to avoid disposing of. If you've been to our facilities, you've seen it grow with the opportunity every year.
Yes, ma'am.
A couple of years ago, I spoke with, I think, one of the solar developers who's going to respond to an RFP, or did respond to an RFP, and I believe he told me that if the development would fall under forest conservation laws, that they would have to do plantings to cap the landfill with solar. So first, is that true? And second, did these 3 attempts not come through because of some more permitting related regulations in the county, and why wouldn't they come through?
Yeah, well, to answer your question, I don't know exactly those issues, but
if I may, ma'am, it's typically an economic. One is the ground flat and of size, and 2, how close or what's the proximity of a BG&E substation for a private solar contractor to consider, let's say, counter sites. For example, the Crownsville State Hospital is prime because you have an adjacent or adjoining substation, and the same thing at the dairy farm. And so people would probably salivate for those sites. Maybe if you coordinated with BGE as they expand their grid, that if you have these locations, can a substation go near them, and then people will be the path to your doorstep.
So again, at the Milledgeville location, I'll tell you what development, we didn't get any proposals, but what the developers said when they came to visit the site was, you have all this roof space, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you do that first? So that's just a perspective, and I think it's easier to develop rooftop solar than it is on a landfill. So, and we've done that in our maintenance shop building. So now at the Glenbury landfill, sir, you're exactly right. We are close both to a grid connection, a potential grid connection, and also the Bayview Industrial Park, where there might potentially be direct consumers for that electricity. And I think the issue on that one was more of probably the economy and the drop in the solar prices, though I can't prove that.
I was probably generally a solar project gets funded by 3 sources equally. Fees from selling power, selling RECs, which is renewable energy credits on the market, and then federal subsidies. Problem in the solar market is the inconsistent renewal of the federal subsidy. It makes it, if you don't have all 3 of those, the project doesn't make financial sense. The other 2 are risky, but it's unpredictable what Congress is going to do in terms of renewing those. And they've said they're not going to renew the subsidy the last time they did. So if you can't get a project done before the subsidy runs out, it just invests a lot of money across the board.
Thank you, we appreciate that. Thank you for the explanation and for the details and for the presentations. There's more information if anybody needs it. We still have some business to do. I need a motion to approve last month's minutes. First one on for the record. Okay, Will. Karen, second, thank you. And Cindy has some updates to provide to us.
Yeah, I just wanted to give you sort of an overview of how the visioning meetings are going so far. So we've already completed 10 of the 17. We've had varying numbers of people coming, anywhere from like 10 to 47. Crownsville and Jessup had the highest with 46 and 47. Actually, the most that Jessup had 47 and Crownsville. I think that's a good turnout for a general meeting. We don't typically see a lot of people come to meetings on planning projects versus development projects. Some of the key things that we're seeing so far, there's appreciation and desire to protect natural resources and natural features. Development and traffic are key changes over the last few years. Desire for improved roadways, traffic conditions, as well as multimodal transportation and transit, as well as bike-ped network improvements and connections. Prioritization for redevelopment and backfilling vacant infill land over development of greenfields, preservation of forests, farmlands, parks, and prioritizing infrastructure in relation to development, including roads and schools.
Are you gonna send that to us? Or can you send that list to us?
I mean, I'd rather wait till they.
Oh, till they finish. I'm sorry.
Actually, all
Yeah,
of these are summarized on,
They're all online.
yeah, they're all online.
They're
And
all
at the end, we'll summarize all of them, and I'd rather.
That's what, I'm sorry, I
Yes.
apologize.
Question, with the multimodal transportation reminds me, you asked us to look at the, Blue Van Arundel. Is it published?
No, it's a draft form on, the county's website, under the transportation division. I think I sent you the link for that. It's.
All I could find was a list of meetings for feedback. I couldn't find the draft.
Took me a half an hour to find out.
That's what I
said. Picture, thing that says.
Yeah, I mean, I can resend the link.
By the way, I have a copy of, a printed copy. I had trouble reading it offline, and so they gave me one copy, and they said this is to be shared with the rest of us. So if anybody wants it, I'm, willing to share it with you. Or you can print it off at 25 cents a page.
They're, taking comments until June 30th, so that you know that. And if you go under transportation, it is the second tab down, is Blue Van Arundel. Mark might be able to find it for you.
Are you going to get the name tags for it to all the meetings?
Yes, we bring all of them in case everybody shows up.
Because some member, who shall remain nameless, Pat Hooker, made it to just about every one of them regardless of where they've been.
We're a tag team.
It's worth your time.
And they are all online. Yes, so if you go to transportation, there you go. Blue Van Arundel, second tab.
Scroll down a little bit more. There you go. Blue Van Arundel. Draft.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that, Mark, thank you very much. Any other comments? Then we need a motion.
For me, Blue Van Arundel, our office, as well as other county agencies, are reviewing it. This is all of it, it's for public review, but including the county agencies.
So we're going to get a briefing on environmental issues regarding noise.
Regarding noise, not that I know of. Our next meeting is June 19th, 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.